after a nuclear war rendered the Earth uninhabitable, humans retreat to a space station known as the Ark. 97 years later, they send 100 juvenile delinquents to Earth to see if the planet is ready for human life. Days after being sent to Earth, Clark mourns her childhood friend, Wells, who was found dead, presumably killed by people who survived on Earth known as grounders. Finn joins her and gives her a pencil, joking that he bought it from an art store. This reminds Clark of how Wells used to give her art materials, only to discover that he was trading his own items to buy them for her. She mourns how she blamed Wells for her father's death when it was her mother who told Chancellor Jaha that her father planned to expose the Ark's failing systems. Hoping to let her mother know how she feels, she comes up with a plan. At the Ark, Dr. Abby Griffin, Clark's mother, wakes up to find that the wristband that monitors Clark's vitals has been terminated. Refusing to believe that her daughter is dead, Abby orders her colleague, Jackson, to check Clark's vitals from the last 2 days. Back on Earth, Monty has removed Clark's wristband without damaging it so he can use it to create a radio to communicate with the Ark. Seeing Finn's judgmental eyes, Clark reasons that if her mother thinks she's dead, it might convince the Ark to send help. Outside, the others are building walls around the camp while the unofficial leaders, Bellamy and Murphy, watch. When Connor collapses out of fatigue, Murphy taunts him until Bellamy tells him to give the guy water. He then goes to help one of the younger members, Charlotte, to lift the wood Connor was carrying. Once Bellamy is away, however, Murphy urinates on Connor instead, sparking a fight. However, Murphy's friends hold him back while their leader commands them to get back to work. Meanwhile, Bellamy's sister, Octavia, leads Jasper out of the gates to help him through his trauma. However, after being attacked by grounders last week, Jasper remains scared. Octavia prances around to show him that it's safe, but she's suddenly pulled behind a bush. Jasper rushes to her aid, only to find that Octavia was just pulled by one of the guys. Pissed, Jasper walks away, but trips and sees 2 severed human fingers and a blade. In the Ark, Abby passes by Counselor Kane, who questions her constant visits to the mecha station. Abby explains that a mechanic got sick there, and she's preventing an outbreak. When she gets to the mecha station, however, Abby talks to Raven, a mechanic who's secretly repairing a pod to head to Earth and find the 100. Abby mentions that Clark's wristband was deactivated, but Raven assures her that she probably just took it off like the others did days ago. Understanding the mother's worry, Raven plots to get a regulator so they can launch the pod soon. Meanwhile, Octavia and Jasper take the fingers and blade to Clark and Bellamy. Since Wells was missing 2 fingers, they figure that they're his. Clark comments that the blade is made from the same material as their dropship, so the grounders didn't kill Wells. Jasper panics that there's a murderer in their camp, but Bellamy tells him to keep it a secret. He argues that the camp has become stable since they're working together after thinking that the grounders killed Wells. However, Clark points out that he's using fear to make the others work. He claims that she can't do anything since they don't know whose knife it is, but Clark points out the initials JM carved into it, so she suspects that it was John Murphy. With that, Clark confronts Murphy, accusing him of killing Wells. She points out that he once threatened to kill Wells, but Murphy argues that many of them hated Wells because he's the son of the Chancellor who locked them up and threw them out. Murphy declares that he doesn't have to answer to anyone, which Bellamy questions. Afraid of him, Murphy defends himself to Bellamy, but he doesn't believe him. Clark points out that Murphy insisted that there should be no rules, but it doesn't mean they can kill without punishment. Connor suggests killing him, which many of those who suffered at Murphy's power tripping agree to. Clark argues that revenge isn't justice, but the rest already step in and beat Murphy to the ground. They tie him up and hoist Murphy over a tree to hang him. Clark begs Bellamy to make them stop, but Connor urges him to do it instead. Despite Murphy and Clark begging him not to, Bellamy kicks the chair under Murphy, hanging him. Seeing all the chaos, Charlotte finally steps in, admitting to Wells' murder. Immediately, Clark releases Murphy. At the Ark, Raven meets with a culinary tech and smuggler, Nigel, to ask for the regulator. Nigel hints that Raven must sleep with the chief of electrical in exchange. Raven is appalled by this, but Nigel implies that her mother took such deals before. This angers the younger woman, so Raven is thrown out of the room. At the camp, Murphy demands for Charlotte, who's hiding in a tent with Bellamy, Clark, and Finn. She explains that she killed Wells to slay her demons since his father executed her parents. Bellamy blames the situation on Clark, insisting that they'd still be building the wall if she hadn't confronted Murphy. Hoping to mitigate the situation, Bellamy steps out and tells Murphy to back off. He reasons that he was only giving the people what they wanted, so Murphy asks the camp if they want to see Charlotte get hanged for her crimes. However, only Murphy's friends raise their hands, angering him. Bellamy insists that it's over, so Murphy slams a piece of wood against his head. He then checks the tent, only to find that Charlotte, Clark, and Finn have escaped to the woods. Meanwhile, Raven notices people lining up to see Abby, so the doctor explains that many suffer from oxygen deprivation as the Ark is failing. Raven shares that she went to Nigel to get the regulator, but failed. Learning that Nigel has it, Abby later slips a pack of morphine to her in exchange for the regulator. In the forest, Finn leads the girls to a hiding spot. Scared, Charlotte tries to hold Clark's hand, but she pulls away, stressing that just because they saved her, it doesn't mean she's forgiven. Finn argues that Charlotte is just a kid, but Clark stresses that she killed someone. With Murphy's voice closing in, Finn reveals a hidden hatch that takes them into an underground bomb shelter where he found the pencil he gave to Clark. After Charlotte has gone to sleep, Clark scolds Finn for keeping the shelter a secret since their camp could have used the supplies there. Finn argues that there are no weapons or edible food, so it's pointless. They conclude that a family built the shelter but never made it. Still, Clark thinks the family was lucky since they died quickly instead of suffering in the shelter for years. Clark worries that their camp has started killing each other, so she insists that there must be consequences to prevent that. Finn, however, insists that they can't just hang people, so they must figure out a way to appease Murphy without harming Charlotte. Unknown to them, Charlotte is awake and listening in. At the Ark, Abby gives Raven the regulator. Meanwhile, Nigel meets with Kane to reveal that Abby gave her morphine in exchange for a pressure regulator. Soon, Clark wakes up and finds Charlotte gone. In the woods, Charlotte runs, but Bellamy finds her. However, Charlotte wants to give herself up since she feels guilty for what she'd done. Murphy closes in, so Bellamy throws Charlotte over his shoulder and takes her away. Meanwhile, Finn and Clark search the woods when they hear Charlotte screaming. At the mecha station, Jackson calls Abby to warn her that Kane knows about the stolen morphine. Knowing that they don't have time before Kane arrives, Abby instructs Raven to continue working and take the pod to the ground and find the 100. In the woods, Bellamy ends up reaching a cliff where Murphy's group corners them. Clark and Finn also arrive and try to negotiate with Murphy to spare Charlotte's life. Instead, Murphy grabs Clark, threatening to kill her if they don't surrender Charlotte. The girl decides to surrender, but Bellamy blocks her. Still, Charlotte is tired of hurting people, so she throws herself off the cliff. Bellamy and Clark mourn, unable to even see her body in the darkness. Bellamy then turns his rage on Murphy and starts beating him until Finn pulls him away. Bellamy insists that Murphy has to die, but Clark argues that they don't get to decide that. She admits that she shouldn't have told people about the knife but insists that they need rules to survive in harmony. With that, Clark suggests banishing Murphy, so Bellamy threatens to kill him if he returns to camp. He then offers Murphy's friends to choose between staying with him or returning to camp. In the end, no one decides to stay with Murphy, so Finn just returns Murphy's knife to give him a chance to survive. While Kane and his men approach, Raven struggles to install the regulator, only to realize that Nigel gave them a defective one. Desperate, she looks at her spacesuit and thinks of another way. Kane confronts Abby, accusing her of manipulating Raven, knowing that her boyfriend, Finn, is among the 100. However, Abby argues that she's trying to save them all. Suddenly, they hear the pod being launched. Raven, while wearing her suit, drives the pod back to Earth. During this, Clark and Bellamy share why they banished Murphy to the camp, which the rest accepts. They then check on Monty, who has developed a way to communicate with the Ark. When Jasper activates it, however, they accidentally fry all the other wristbands instead. Jasper sits back, thinking he's cursed. Octavia, however, thinks he's brave for trying, so she kisses him. Meanwhile, Finn returns to the shelter and lashes out, pissed at what's happening to the camp and losing their chance to contact the Ark. He believes they're on their own, but Clark assures him that he's not alone. At the height of his emotion, Finn kisses her. The two become intimate while Finn's girlfriend floats in space, hoping to return to him. The next day, Chancellor Jaha visits Abby in prison. Instead of discussing Raven's mission, he reports that their oxygen levels are reaching a critical point, so he grants her a temporary pardon to help the patients. Jaha prepares to give her an extra oxygen tank, but Abby refuses since choosing who gets the extra supplies is no different than choosing who lives and dies. However, Jaha reveals that the council has agreed to reduce the population to conserve oxygen. 320 people will be executed in 12 hours, but Abby insists that they have to wait for Raven to confirm the Earth's condition. Jaha, however, berates her for putting Raven's life in danger when it was hopeless from the start. He insists that she take the oxygen tank so she can help the patients, so Abby finally takes it. In space, Raven activates the pod's safety function before speeding into the Earth's atmosphere. The pod heats up as she plummets into the planet. Meanwhile, Clark and Finn are waiting for sunrise when they see the pod speeding onto Earth. At the camp, Bellamy and the rest hear the pod descending. While the rest are happy to see this, Bellamy worries as his crime at the Ark might be discovered. He tells his group to wait for sunrise before checking the pod, which they believe crashed near the lake. Octavia points out that the grounders might have seen it and get to the pod first, but he insists on leaving at sunrise. At the Ark, Abby conducts a test on a girl named Reese, who's showing signs of blindness due to oxygen deprivation. Growing desperate, she orders Jackson to monitor if Raven contacts them, insisting that it's the only way they can save their people. Clark and Finn return to the camp, only to discover that Bellamy left by himself. Clark thinks Bellamy wants to get to the pod before anyone else, recalling how he had been making sure that the Ark thinks they didn't survive. By morning, Bellamy is still heading to the pod when he discovers that Octavia is following him. She calls him selfish for doing whatever he wants, but Bellamy insists that he's been protecting her. Desperate, Bellamy confesses that he was hired to shoot Chancellor Jaha in exchange for sending him to Earth with Octavia to protect her. He insists that Jaha deserved it for executing their mother and locking up his sister, but Octavia is appalled and runs off. Meanwhile, Jaha tells Kane that he'll join the people who will be culled to save their oxygen. He offers Kane the position of Chancellor after his death since he's not weakened by sentiment like him, which the Ark might need to survive. On Earth, Bellamy finds the pod and sees an unconscious Raven. Instead of killing her, he rips off the radio from her pod and throws it into the lake. Soon, Raven wakes up just as Clark finds her. Stepping on Earth for the first time, Raven relishes in nature. Finn then catches up to them, and Raven quickly greets him with a kiss, revealing to Clark that she's Finn's girlfriend. Learning who Clark is, Raven reveals that Abby planned on getting her to Earth because the Council is considering killing people to save oxygen. With that, Raven hurries to the pod to report to the Ark, only to find that the radio is missing. Knowing that Bellamy took it, Clark hurries to find him. In the Ark, Abby confronts Jaha about sacrificing himself while putting Kane in charge. He explains that he can't let anyone sacrifice their lives without doing so himself, and Kane doesn't hesitate to get things done. She tries to devise other ways to save oxygen, but he reminds her that they've tried everything else. Unwilling to give up, Abby takes a flash drive with a video from her deceased husband, Jake. Meanwhile, Octavia tries to return to camp but hears someone chasing her. She runs but ends up tripping down a hill, hitting her head with a rock. Elsewhere, Clark, Finn, and Raven find Bellamy, confronting him about the radio. Raven mentions that the Ark has been looking for Bellamy since he shot Jaha. This leads Clark to realize that Bellamy was disconnecting them from the Ark to save himself. Bellamy argues that Jaha deserved to die, but Raven reveals that the Chancellor survived. Clark reminds him that he's always been protecting his sister, and now he can save 300 people. At the Ark, Abby releases Jake's video, where he confessed that the Ark has been malfunctioning for a long time. Still, Jake believed that such a crisis would bring out the best in the people, as they've pledged to prevent humanity from dying. Abby then broadcasts how Jake was executed for trying to warn them. Now, the Council has decided to sacrifice 300 people, so she urges them to take control of their fates. On Earth, the camp searches for the radio in the lake. Finn uses this chance to apologize to Clark about Raven, but she waves him off, saying she understands that she was just conveniently there. Finally, someone finds the radio, but Raven thinks it'll take time to fix it, so she comes up with another plan to let the Ark know they're alive. At the Ark, the Council panics at what Abby did. Kane notes that people are gathering, believing that they will riot soon. Suddenly, Reese's father enters to talk to Abby. To their surprise, he volunteers to be sacrificed to save his daughter's life. More people also volunteer to protect their families, so Jaha admits that Jake was right to believe that the people will come together in this time of crisis. Meanwhile, the camp works together to launch rockets from the pod's parts, hoping that the Ark will see them. At the same time, Kane confirms the number of volunteers and tries to convince Jaha not to join them since he's the one who can inspire people, not him. Elsewhere, Reese's father tells his daughter that he'll just be working a double shift. He then hugs and kisses her goodbye, leaving her unaware of the sacrifice he's about to make. The volunteers shuffle into the sector to be sacrificed. Abby notices that Jaha has changed his mind, and Kane explains that he's been convinced by the truth. Finally believing in others, Kane tells Abby that he has men monitoring the radio in case Raven calls them too. Soon, the volunteers gather, awaiting their fates. With a heavy heart, Jaha seals the sector's oxygen supply just as the camp launches the rockets. One by one, the volunteers fall asleep, including Reese's father, who drops his daughter's hairpin at the last moment of his life. Meanwhile, Octavia wakes up in the dark and finds a grounder watching her. Later, Jaha joins Abby in her room, drinking away their sorrows and guilt. Suddenly, Abby sees the rockets from her window, signaling that the 100 are alive.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.